I can see you as a front man, actually, yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You've got that angsty look about you.
Yeah, a Sting-like figure playing bass up at the front.
Sting.
Yeah, bit of tantric sex, you know.
That's definitely going on at the beginning.
Love it. Love it.
Good morning, Vietnam!
I love the smell of napalm in the morning.
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
I feel the need for speed.
Roads? When we're going, we don't need roads.
Snakes. Why'd it have to be snakes?
I'm Spartacus!
I'm Batman.
I am your father. I told you that I want to go to that festival in Sweden.
No, you said it would be cool to go.
Yeah, and then I got the opportunity and I decided
Look,
to
I
do
don't mind
it.
you going. I just wish you would have told me. That's all.
Dude, she needs a therapist. You've been wanting out of this stupid relationship for like a year now.
And don't forget about all of the beautiful Swedish women you'll meet in June.
Okay, guys.
That's not her again. Seriously?
Babe, what's happening? Danny.
Welcome everybody back to the Moviescramble podcast. The Dark Knights are here and so are we. Joining me as usual, Mary, how are you tonight?
I'm good. How are you?
I am not too bad. I'm not loving these Dark Knights, to be honest with you. It takes me a few weeks to kind of adjust, but we have got a spooky podcast planned, so maybe it's good that it is dark. John, how are you?
Yeah, I am same as you. Adjusting badly to the darkness. I popped into my work yesterday at 4 o'clock and then came back out at 5 o'clock and it was pitch black, and I was really, really annoyed.
What kind of work do you have that you can just pop in at 4 and leave at 5? I need your job.
I needed to pick something up from my work. That was all. It wasn't a work day. I'm not that dedicated.
I like the dark nights though. Winter's when I thrive. It's all chunky jumpers, cozy nights in, books, candles, all that sort of thing. This is me coming into my Wednesday Addams. I love it.
I mean, I get where you're coming from, but it's cold.
It's Scotland. I don't know what else to tell you.
Yeah.
Yes, but we do have some podcast listeners abroad, so you don't understand how cold it gets in Scotland. It's cold, it's dark, it's Halloween this week. Why not review one of the year's most talked about horror films in Ari Aster's Midsommar?
Midsommar is Ari Aster's follow-up to his cult hit from a couple of years ago, Hereditary. It's set in the US and Sweden. It's a film about a group of students and a girl who travel to Sweden to witness a midsummer festival in the wilds of the Swedish north, where it never gets dark. The main character, Danny, has just recently suffered a massive bereavement, which has really changed her life. And she's looking for something to try and get herself back on an even keel. She doesn't think that the trip's going to do that, but it gives her a bit of space and time to actually work out what's actually going on with her life. Now, obviously, with the fact that it's an Ari Aster film, things may not be as it seems. Everything seems very gentle and nice to begin with, but as the 9 days of the midsummer festivities begin, things start to change, both in terms of the group dynamic and also everything else that's going on around them. Safe to say that it's a very good film.
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed it as well, and I don't know if I've mentioned this before in the podcast, but I know I've definitely mentioned it to both of you. I wasn't a fan of Hereditary.
Me neither.
I wanted to like it. It had everything. I watched the trailer, everything about it was like, this is going to be great, I'm really looking forward to it, and I just didn't like it. And when I saw the trailer for Midsommar, I thought, oh, here we go again. It's going to be all style, no substance. It's not going to be scary. It's not going to be that interesting. It's probably going to bore me. But I really enjoyed it. I thought visually it was a stunning film to look at. I thought the acting performances were great, especially with Florence Pugh, who's just excellent. I always love seeing Will Poulter in films, and yeah, I thought it was very much a kind of Ari Aster's take on The Wicker Man, let's be honest. But very creepy, very effective, and even idiots laugh in the cinema couldn't put me off it.
I didn't have anyone laughing this time. Hereditary, towards the end, people were absolutely pissing themselves, and like you, for that reason, I was just kind of like, "Ugh, it's going to be another one of those kind of films." But I found it an extremely slow burn. So if you're going in expecting jump scares and a lot of that, you're going to be really disappointed. But I actually liked it for that reason, and I thought it was very what's the word? It kind of puts you into a sense of sort of disequilibrium from the start, like emotionally. You know, you're expecting a lot of jump scares, but it delivers sort of other on other emotional levels. It sort of leaves you kind of wanting a wee bit more from some stuff and really shocked to others. And as you guys said, the visuals, you know, the cinematography is absolutely stunning. There's some really beautiful overhead shots of the Harga at dinner or performing sort of ritual dances and stuff like that. And it's, you know, it's really rooted in you know, indie cinematography. It's absolutely beautiful to look at, but at the same time it's almost a kind of unconventional horror. I absolutely loved it. I thought Florence Pugh was great, and for me it was one of those films that was really sort of primal and earthy, and you were kind of involved with it, and it had a distinct sort of rhythm, kind of felt through the sort of breathing and the dances and the rituals that they were doing. You kind of got into that rhythm yourself, and yeah, no, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it.
Yeah, I mean, Florence Pugh is great anyway, and she's absolutely brilliant in this. She seems to have this like constant look on her face the entire film of the person that knows this is going to go tits up. I shouldn't be here. I should leave before everyone dies. It's almost like she's the audience in a way.
Yeah. But there's also that, because she's exposed to tragedy quite early on, she's almost like out of it for most of the film, not in terms of like drugged up or anything. No, there are elements of that, but she seems detached. She's detached from her boyfriend, and she's detached from the group, so she is looking at everything almost like from the point of an outsider.
Plus, like, in her emotional state, she's kind of prime candidate for joining a cult. Like, she's been gaslighted by her boyfriend, and she's had to deal with extreme family tragedy and a huge change of circumstances that way. And in that sense, she's, you know, a very vulnerable individual, and that tends to be the type of person that these cults pick up. But obviously not all cults. There are some cults out there that I'm sure are doing wonderful work.
Yeah, I'm sure to mention them, but but yeah, I mean, it's like it's really uncomfortable at the beginning of the film when you're saying she's getting gaslit by her boyfriend and stuff, and she kind of like, he invites her on the lad's holiday, and they don't want her there. Oh, that's really uncomfortable, because I think we've all been there at some point.
Oh yeah, and it's like he's totally on the verge of breaking up with her. This family tragedy happens, and he's like, "Oh, well, I can't heap that on top of her now, so I'll just stay with her." And you can like their relationship at the start when they get to Sweden is really, really fractured, because he's sort of only invited her out of this misplaced sense of like duty, and she doesn't really want to be there. She just wants to be with him, because kind of that's all she's clinging on to. And that's what I mean. It's a film that totally unsettles you right from the offset, and you never really get that sense of balance. Like, it's never a film that allows you to sort of breathe and go, okay, things are going to get slightly better here, or things are going to return to normal, because actually no state of normalcy is ever established, because it kind of hits you right from the offset. For me, it was a huge improvement on Hereditary. In terms of even just style. Hereditary was quite stylish, but this is even more so. And actually, it was a plot that was kind of well thought through right to the end, and it does get a wee bit silly, but not kind of on the scale that Hereditary did, that actually garnered laughs from the audience. This didn't.
To be fair, actually, there was one bit in Midsommar I started laughing towards the end, but it didn't ruin it for me. And I didn't laugh because I thought it was stupid. It was just it kind of came out the blue. And it kind of caught me off.
That you're meaning, yep.
Yeah, it caught me off guard, and I found myself uncontrollably laughing.
I think there was some nervous laughter. No, I think there was some nervous laughter though. Like, I think the scene in particular where Florence Pugh's down on the floor with all the kind of maidens, and they're all doing that weird sort of like labour breathing, like as if she's about to give birth, and she's like supposed to kind of purge all her sort of negativity. A couple of people maybe sort of laughed a wee bit at that, but actually the more it continued, the more people were kind of holding their breath. It was a kind of weird sensation. It was like you were invading on somebody's like therapy almost. It was like a private moment that you maybe shouldn't be looking at.
There's an awful lot of foreshadowing in the film as well. Like, the first image you actually see is a tapestry, and basically it lays out the entire film. in this tapestry. If you look at it, it tells you everything that's going to happen.
It's got the pube cutting on it.
No, that's the second one. No, that. And it's a very subtle device that they use throughout as well. They use paintings and diagrams from like inside the big hall where they all sleep, almost to chapter the film, and it's what's going to happen. But you don't really realise it when you're watching it. It's only if you watch it again you go, well, that's that bit and that's that bit, and then you see all these sort of things, and you see the second one where somebody goes, "Oh, what's that there?" And it's the one, with the pubes and.
I just wanted to hear you say that.
The tasty pie. Oh dear. But there's quite a lot of that as well. That if you think about it, there's when Danny receives the news at first, or tragic news, and the wailing and everything that she does when she's sitting on the couch with her boyfriend, who's aptly named Christian for a film that features a cult, which I thought was quite on the nose. But her wailing, that gets repeated, and there's so many things that get repeated and sort of called back on. For her birthday, she gets a drawing of herself, and that drawing informs something that happens later on as well. It's very cleverly done, but it's very, very subtle.
The emotions in it are incredible. I thought, see that crying that she did on the couch, as you say at the beginning, that to me was like, I have sobbed my heart out like that. And I found that very kind of upsetting to watch, because it was almost like you were sort of helpless watching her. And it didn't feel like cinema crying, like where they have like one tear rolling down there. It was really primal and, animalistic. And there was a lot of like just pure sound. And to me, that was like, it was one of the most realistic depictions of grief I've ever seen. It was an incredible performance.
It's what made it so unsettling, didn't it?
Yeah, she was absolutely fantastic in it. She has as I said earlier, she's a cracking actress, and she really kind of excels in this. And you mentioned as well about the film being a slow burner, and it really is, and it's not overly violent, but when there is violence in the film, Jesus, it is graphic. Yeah. It's hard hitting. It's really effective.
Yeah, I mean, you're sitting there for the first hour expecting something to happen, and then there's a ceremony, and there's this guy standing there with a big hammer, and you're going, "What's the big hammer for?" And then you find out what the big hammer's actually for.
Yeah. I know you're sitting there like, well, this is set in Sweden. Maybe it's something to do with Thor. Oh no, that's fucking Norway. Oh, cut that. Sorry, I don't know. It's like, but for me, it was. I didn't feel like I didn't need the violence. Do you know what I mean? The kind of psychological uncertainty of it all was enough to kind of make me shit myself quite a lot of the time, because I think the emotional stuff always hits home a lot more than what's essentially fake blood. But I thought the violence was executed very well, in the sense that it was kind of, everything had a ritual about it. Everything was like this sort of fitted into this kind of pattern of behaviours in amongst the Harga.
I like the fact that all the men, they were all anthropology students, so therefore they were studying cultures and peoples, and yet they were some of the most self-absorbed, self-centered people you're ever likely to meet. Even when they were actually researching the cult and they were going to do their thesis on it, things like that, they were completely insensitive to the culture that they were actually immersing themselves in. They wanted to take pictures of things all the time, and they were trying to one-up each other and everything. And basically just horrible, shallow guys who should be nowhere near anthropology, because they've got absolutely nothing in common with anybody. They were just nasty, and I think that was obviously very deliberate on the part of the filmmaker.
And interestingly, for anthropology students, they did not pick up on the cues as to what was coming, because there's a lot of it that's very ritualized and part of history and part of folklore and all the rest of it. And yet, as you said, they're so self-absorbed, they don't seem to see what's awaiting them.
Will Poulter's peeing on the ancestral tree, and lo and behold, some of the elders take real exception to that. And you're just watching the film going, mate, leave. Just get out where you can.
Yeah, and he's basically just scouting up and down the dinner line, seeing who might fancy him or whatever. That's what he's there for, not like learning about culture and being part of this kind of ancient civilization or whatever.
Yeah, and you see, especially the likes of the big sort of gatherings. Obviously, they're all wearing normal clothes, and everybody else is wearing white, and they're all very still, and that sort of reflects the sort of the film itself. The film is quite still, and it takes its time, and all the people who are part of the commune just they stand and they watch and they observe. But even when the Americans are observing things, they're shuffling about, they're looking at each other, they're not concentrating, they're talking. They're basically just been completely disrespectful and just been like arrogant Westerners, I think is probably a good way to put it. They can come in and do whatever the hell they want. Yep.
One of the things about and I actually wrote this in the reviews that I absolutely loved, was, as I said, the sound, this kind of breathing, crying, mourning, but there was a kind of lack of sound as well, because there was not that I remember, there was kind of like some occasional bits of music, but a lot of it was quite still and quite silent, and a lot of the Harga don't wear shoes as well, so they would just sort of enter a scene, but you had there was no sort of audio cues that somebody was coming or approaching, because you didn't hear the sound of maybe shoes on grass or shoes on gravel. So that kind of added to the sort of horror thriller element of it as well, because they were just appearing into scenes and you had no sort of warning that something was about to happen. So that was quite interesting as well, and that obviously that was part of their culture, but it was sort of used to the advantage of creating this sense of like tension.
The film is out on DVD, and there is an extended version of the film as well as the regular film. The extended version is 25 minutes longer, and to be honest, I don't think it needed it. It doesn't actually add anything to the film. There's no other subplots or anything getting developed with this extended footage. It just gives a wee bit more sort of meat onto the bones of it, which it actually could have done without.
Mary, you just said it was your film of the year up until Joker came out, so I can safe to say it's a recommend from you.
Absolutely. It's not for everyone, and I think if you're a sort of a jump scare type of horror lover, it's definitely not going to be for you, but I couldn't get enough of it. I thought it was brilliant.
John, if you're not watching the director's cut, but just the normal cinema release?
Oh, even the director's cut, I would say, yeah, it's right up there. It's one of my favourites from the year as well. But yes, I would definitely recommend it.
Yeah, and so would I. I mean, it's not a film I've been in a rush to see again, but I'm glad I did watch it. I don't think it'll make my top 10, but I did enjoy it, and yeah, I would recommend it. And that's a unanimous recommend for Ari Aster's Midsommar, and it's out now on Blu-ray, DVD, download, Kodi. Sorry, scratch that last one. But yeah, go watch it. If you have seen it, let us know what you think in the usual means.
It's sort of a crazy festival. Special ceremonies and dressing up.
That sounds fun.
Unbelievable.
Welcome and happy Midsummer. Skål!
Midsommar, big theme is cults. So we looked at our top 3, not necessarily our top 3 films that have cults in them, but top 3 cults in film. Now, we've all got our individual lists as usual, going by the draft pick. We made Mary pick last this time, so we could ensure she didn't just steal all our picks. And as I had the pleasure of choosing first this time, I'm going to go first. And I'm going to go with David Fincher's Fight Club, which, when you think of movies with cults in them, you think more kind of horror movies, something kind of sinister, supernatural even. Not necessarily Fight Club, but let's be honest, this film centres around a massive, massive cult. Stars Brad Pitt as Tyler Durden and, what's his name again, Christ? Ed Norton as the unnamed narrator. They basically start an unlikely friendship and form an underground fight club where losers basically turn up and fight each other to try and instill some meaning in their life. It gets out of hand, they become a militia, and they basically do anything that their cult leader, Tyler Durden, tells them to, which includes blowing up buildings, beating up people, and cutting the balls off traitors. I love Fight Club. It's one of my favourite movies.
I mean, most cults centre around, one person's personality or charisma, and I think that's, quite applicable here. I think certainly maybe sometimes the sort of violence associated with cults is more seen in a sort of massive scale. You talk about like, fascists or whatever. But this is very much almost kind of Clockwork Orangey in its appeal. I think it's a great film.
They do have their own twisted logic in what they're fighting against, but again, yeah, it all comes down to the fact that they're following the words of a man who may or may not exist.
I'm sure we can do spoilers. Yeah, I'm sure we can. It's like, who is Kaiser Soze? Like, we're over that now. We can say.
My first pick is Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master from 2012. It stars Joaquin Phoenix as Freddie Quell, who's a World War II veteran who is falling on hard times after he gets demobbed. And after basically working his way through anything he can get his hands on to drink, he ends up at the door of Lancaster Dodd, who's played by Philip Seymour Hoffman. Now, Philip Seymour Hoffman is the man who's in charge of the cult in this particular film. It's called The Cause. Now, the Cause is an organisation that sort of puts forward the ideas of Dianetics, which is obviously very close to Scientology. They don't actually mention Scientology at all during the film, but it's actually quite clear that that's what it's based on. And again, it's another one of these cult of personality films. It's the charismatic leader and his word and his teachings that affect Freddie, because Freddie is a lost soul and he's looking for something. He's prime material, like Mary mentioned in Midsommar. He's a character who is looking for something, and it just so happens that this comes along, and he will do anything at all in order to be part of it. Now, where that leads to is obviously quite deep and dark. It's not a fun film by any means. It's quite harrowing, and it also obviously puts The Cause into a bit of a bad light as well by the way that they treat people who are no longer welcome within their ranks, and people who tend to disagree with them from outside as well. Freddie becomes a bit of almost like a hitman. He tends to shout down and then actually physically assault people who get in the way of his ideal and the way of Dodd's teachings as well. It's a pretty good movie. What do you guys think?
See, I'd never seen The Master, but I knew what it was kind of based on. I didn't realise it was so blatantly based on. I mean, it's like, we don't want to mention Scientology specifically, so we'll just talk about Dianetics by R. Lon Hubbard. It's like, I didn't realise it was so clearly based on it, but I haven't seen it, unfortunately. I do want to, though.
Yeah, it clearly references the L. Ron Hubbard era when he was living on a boat in order to avoid taxes, I think, and general other things. But the chemistry between Philip Seymour Hoffman and Joaquin Phoenix is outstanding. The scene that stands out for me is when Philip Seymour Hoffman sings that kind of weird song to him. It's like, I want to take you on a slow boat to China. And it just closes up on the two guys' face. It sort of alternates between their reactions, and that was some tense and weird cinema. I loved that film. That scene always stands out to me as being the sort of one of the weirder moments. It was brilliant. My pick is Mandy, which I only saw a few months ago. And to be honest with you, it wasn't a film that I was particularly interested in. Starring Nicolas Cage, and that's probably why, if I'm being honest, I wasn't really interested in it. So he plays Red, who's like a kind of lumberjack, and him and his wife, played by Andrea Riseborough, she's called Mandy, live out in the edge of a forest, and she's this sort of trippy, kind of long-haired, sort of painting weird paintings, reading science fiction type of hippie woman, and she happens to catch the attention of a local cult leader played by Linus Roach, who is the son of Ken Barlow from Coronation Street, which is a really weird, random fact. And so this cult leader sort of falls in love with her and decides that he must have her, so he kidnaps her. And the sort of main story of the film is basically Nicolas Cage going on a murderous rampage to get her back. It is a film that genuinely makes you feel like you're on a fuck ton of drugs for a lot of the time. It's really trippy. The music's really trippy. The cinematography, a lot of the scenes are kind of swathed in this pink light, and it feels like you've taken acid. It is absolutely nuts. And this cult is this, they've got these weird kind of people dressed in like gimp suits going out on motorbikes with these sort of self-made horrific weapons, and they meet in this kind of underground cavern where Linus Roach's character is sort of, naked and everyone's bowing down and they all love him and stuff like that. It is absolutely mental when you think of like, you end up down the rabbit hole at 2 a.m. on Reddit reading about weird cults. This would be up there if this was a real life cult. It is absolutely, mental. And there's a scene with Nick Cage standing in a pair of like ill-fitting Y-fronts in a bathroom, blood all over his face, screaming, holding a bottle of vodka. It was crazy from start to finish. I absolutely loved it.
Yeah, I saw it last year at Sitges with an audience, and it's a brilliant film to watch with an audience, especially the primal scream Nicolas Cage moment. That's just amazing, seeing him. But I like the fact that it was like completely oversaturated colours and everything, and the biker gang that the cult call upon to do their bidding and everything. Yeah, it was an absolutely far out film. Very good.
Yeah.
I will get round to it at some point, I'm sure.
You would love it. I mean, honestly, you would absolutely love it.
Yeah. Oh, my second pick, I'm going to go with an old classic in The Wicker Man.
Nice.
I was going to say which version, the Nick Cage version or not.
Well, as much as I love the original, I'm going to go with the Nicolas Cage version. As much as I do genuinely love Nicolas Cage, is horrifically bad. Although the only saving grace is him screaming about the bees at the end of it. No, of course, I am speaking about the original 1973 British horror film directed by Robin Hardy, starring Edward Woodward, Britt Eklund, Ingrid Pitt and Christopher Lee. This film doesn't really need much of an introduction. Edward Woodward is a small town cop sent to this island to investigate a disappearance. He doesn't know that this seemingly harmless cult are actually a bit nuts, and they want to sacrifice somebody, and by burning them alive in a big massive wicker man so they can get good crops or something. I can't even remember the reason behind it, but the film is genuinely terrifying and so effective. The fact that the majority of the film is set during the day. It's broad daylight, and it's horrible that this seemingly harmless cult are actually a bit nuts, and they want to sacrifice somebody, and by burning them alive in a big massive wicker man so they can get good crops or something. I can't even remember the reason behind it, but the film is genuinely terrifying and it's so effective. The fact that the majority of the film is set during the day. It's broad daylight, and it's horrible. It really is. You really feel for Edward Woodward's character, as he's trapped in this island. He has no friends. Everybody he bumps into are all in cahoots against him. Christopher Lee is absolutely fantastic as just being Christopher Lee and being evil and creepy. And yeah, it's always seen as one of the most classic best horror films ever. It's hard for me to argue. I think it's an absolute masterpiece. And the ending, you talk about Midsommar being a slow burner. The Wicker Man's a slow burner. And the third act, building up to the finale, is dragged out very uncomfortably to the point of just like, please just end. This has to stop sooner or later. And it doesn't. And it just keeps going and going and going. And it's not an overly graphic film. It's not very, very violent. It's really psychological, and it just really sticks with you.
Awesome choice. I completely agree. The ending of that film, I always remember it was like on ITV4 or something at like 2 a.m. So as usual, I couldn't sleep. And I remember just watching it, and the ending of that film, which I won't spoil people who haven't seen it, I will never get out of my head. It's one of those iconic cinema moments. I get what you mean about dragging it out. It's brilliant.
Yeah, I like the way that, like you said, Sammy, it's grim. Everything about it's grim because it's set on an island. I think it was filmed in the south west of Scotland, down sort of Dumfries way.
Yeah.
And it's grim down there anyway, because I used to spend summers down there. So it wasn't great. But yes, it really captures the sort of the isolation and the fact that the way that it's shot and everything as well, it's quite grey a lot of the time. There's not a lot of colour to it, and that kind of reflects in the sort of the situation. Well, yeah, it reflects Scotland in the summer.
Yeah. On your pick.
My second pick is a film called The Endless, which was from 2017. Basic story of it is two guys, they're brothers, who escaped from a UFO death cult in their early teens, and they basically got lots of counselling and stuff, and they've started to have a sort of semi-normal life, albeit with a lot of therapy and everything going on. And then they receive a video cassette from their former friends at the cult. They're called Camp Arcadia, and they decide to go back to see what it's all about, what's going on. One of the brothers was a little older, so he realised what was going on, or what he thought was going on was not a good thing, and he obviously took his own good advice and basically get out while he could, whereas his younger brother didn't have the same sort of memories. He enjoyed himself. He's obviously got very fond memories of everything that was going on there. So they go back to the cult, and everything seems just as they left. Everybody seems roughly about the same age, and they're all very welcoming and everything. And over the course of 3 nights, they find out pretty much what's going on and why they were actually called back. And it is creepy and scary and more psychologically tense than actual horror tense. There's not a lot of sort of jumps or scares in it, but it's the build up of the sort of the dread. You know something's going to happen, and they stretch it out, and you only see everything from the perspective of the brothers, so you don't really know what's going on. You're only aware of what they're aware of. So everybody they meet seems very nice and calm. You're kind of thinking, oh, they're a bit too calm, which is never a good sign. You always want a bit of life about people. So it's one of these films that kind of flew under the radar a wee bit, but it's definitely worth seeking out. I would really recommend it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that at all. No. Like when you mentioned it earlier, I've had to go and IMDb it, but it sounds absolutely fascinating.
Yeah, it kind of came and went. I think it was really just a DVD release. Again, it was one I saw at a film festival last year. So, and it was one of these ones that it was a sort of a blind buy, just something to fill up a wee bit of time, and it was actually really worthwhile. I'd read a couple of interviews with the guys who made it as well, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead, and they've been working together for years, and they were totally committed to this, and it's made in a sort of shoestring budget as well, and just what they've actually got out of it is just, it's something quite special, and it's a slightly different take on the sort of the whole cult thing as well. They don't paint them as being totally horrible people, but obviously there's quite a lot going on there at the same time. Mary?
So I'm obsessed with like religious fervor. Like I love when you find some absolutely crazy, usually American group of people who are convinced that, they have to bury themselves underground and the world's going to end and all that sort of shit. So I love anything like that I can get my hands on. So my second pick is Red State, starring Melissa Leo and John Goodman. And basically it's kind of like, I think they're supposed to be almost like Seventh-day Adventists. I think they have another name. So not that obviously, but there's this religious, extreme Christian religious cult. And it starts off 3 teenage friends. They're basically trying to hook up with a woman for sex, meet online or whatever. And before they know it, they're drinking beers and they wake up basically inside this cult. And, it starts off like at 11, this film, the boys wake up and they're like, they've been like duct taped on this altar, and they're absolutely screaming. I'm pretty sure they've got ball gags in as well. They're absolutely screaming. They don't know where they are. They're obviously surrounded by all these, religious fundamentalists. And this religious family or organization, whatever you want to call them, are basically armed to the teeth because the ATF, this branch of the American police, want to storm their building, and they're sort of using these boys as kind of bait. And the whole thing is, it's like one big giant shoot off. These boys are begging for their lives, and these, this religious group led by John Goodman's pastor character obviously don't want to be arrested because they've, there's allegations of, torture and all that sort of thing as well. It is absolutely terrifying. Like, religious fervor in itself is quite freaky, people all speaking in tongues and fainting and all that sort of thing, but when you add in an absolute weaponry of like machetes and all these guns and stuff like that, it starts off at a super high level, as I say, these boys begging for their lives, and it builds and builds from there. And if you're wanting just basically a good old fashioned shootout, this is a kind of a great film about religious cults to watch. It was one that I think I saw like a totally random pick on like a Tuesday morning or something like that at a cinema, and I remember walking at the cinema feeling absolutely traumatized by what I'd just seen. It was so emotionally, like, I was just left the film like, wow, that has drained me. But really good film. Nobody's really heard of it, but it's one of those ones that it's like a go-to kind of, just for pure violence.
That's a film, and I first seen the trailer for that, I was thinking to myself, this is looking quite interesting, and then it was like directed by that Kevin Smith, and I was like, oh, Kevin Smith is really kind of changing up his genre here, and I thought the film looked absolutely incredible, and I can't wait to see this, and I didn't like it.
Oh no.
I did. It was that kind of way. It's like, I thought the premise was great. I really enjoyed it for the most part, and then I thought it just came out flying off the rails, went a bit silly, turned into a kind of slapstick comedy at times. It was a bit stupid, and I thought it was a film that looked great. The trailer really sold it to me, and I didn't think it delivered the same way.
I think that's why I liked it, because it just kept ramping up, and okay, the stuff was getting a wee bit ridiculous, but I think that's what I was hoping for, almost, because it was like a shootout kind of situation. And as I say, I'm kind of obsessed by religious fundamentalists. I'm like, bring it on. Sammy, your last pick.
I am going to go with a film that I don't actually like, but I have to mention it because it's stuck with me. I mean, I've seen this film loads of times as well. This was during a time when like streaming services didn't exist, and I would watch like the Halloween series on repeat. And this includes Halloween 6, The Curse of Michael Myers. Now, anybody that's seen the first Halloween film and maybe thought, yeah, do you know what? I've gave up. He's evil incarnate. There's not much of a backstory regarding him. He's a young kid. He killed his sister. He grew up to be a serial killer. It happens. He's quite hard to kill, but for all intents and purposes, he's just a guy. Oh, not in Halloween 6. Basically, it turns out that Michael has been cursed by this ancient druid curse, called the Curse of Thorn. It's a mystical symbol that gives him his immortality and makes him want to kill. And this cult basically surrounds the film that they try and use Michael for their own ends and stuff, and it's absolutely horrific. It's terrible. They basically took this amazing, great premise from the first movie. Don't know what they were thinking. They tried to explain why he is the way he is, and you're just like, what?
I'm not going to lie, that sounds absolutely shite.
It's horrific, but it's worth watching. And it follows on for Halloween 5, Revenge of Michael Myers, with the whole curse and the cult first introduced. At the end of that film, he gets arrested and he's in jail. And the cult break him out of jail. Now, we're talking about a immortal, serial killer, cursed, demon-type entity who gets arrested. The film is so bad that they erased it from the series not once, but twice. Because Halloween H2O is a direct sequel to Halloween 2, and the last Halloween film is a direct sequel to the first one. This film has been erased from the timeline twice. It's not very good. Now, is it watchable? Yeah, it's very watchable because it's so bad it's good. It's very notable as well. It's the final film by Donald Pleasence was in. Now, Donald Pleasence, who played Dr. Loomis in the Halloween series, even in a film this bad, he's still very good in it. He's great. he has a big great performance, and it's also the movie where Paul Rudd made his acting starring debut.
Oh, that makes me so sad. Paul Rudd deserves so much better.
I would recommend you go and see it, but you probably really need to see Halloween 1, 2, 4, and 5 for some context.
What is with you and picking stuff that's like 5 or 6 into a franchise?
I don't know what's wrong with me. I've been trying to figure that out for a while.
Well, I can't say I've seen it, and to be honest with you, I can't say I'm going to seek it out, but I'll take your word for it.
I think you should still go and see it. John?
I'm going to change my last pick. I was originally going to pick Kill List, but I've thought of a better one. Well, not better, but probably a better cult. I'm going to choose Beneath the Planet of the Apes, which is the second film in the series. Basically, Charlton Hestonless, because he disappears at the very start of it. So somebody who looks a wee bit like him, I think he's probably got the same hair colour and about the same size. He takes over. The guy's called Brent rather than Heston's Taylor, and he escapes from the Ape City and ventures into the Forbidden Zone, where they go underground and they meet the cult that basically worship the nuclear bomb. Now, this was one of the sort of the earlier films I saw on television years ago when I was must have been only about 10 or something, and it scared the crap out of me with this. Now, I'm going to spoil this for people who have never seen Beneath the Planet of the Apes. I mean, it was only released in 1970, so you may not have seen it. But basically, because they've been worshipping this nuclear bomb, they've all been affected by radiation. So they're all basically wearing masks. And when they take off the masks, they're all horrifically deformed underneath it, and basically with the radiation burns. And it scared the crap out of me when I was wee. Just this idea, and obviously you're talking about being in the middle of the sort of the Cold War and everything as well. This is sort of the mid-70s and everything. So the fear of a nuclear winter was really quite high upon everybody's thoughts at that point as well. So it was quite present at the time, and it's just one of these films that stayed with me, especially because of these bomb worshipping cultists, which, let's face it, we've still got today in one form or another.
One of whom is in the White House, yeah.
I didn't want to say that in case the CIA stop our podcast.
Oh, I've already slagged off Scientology. I'm done for anyway.
Yeah, I know. It's like I think this next podcast with is going to just me and you, John. Maybe he's going to disappear in the middle of the night.
Well, my last pick, as John knows, since it was going to be his last pick, is Hot Fuzz, and I can totally spoil this because it's on ITV2 like every weekend. So obviously Simon Pegg is a policeman, but he's like a inner city London policeman, so he's used to everything moving really slickly, and he moves to this tiny village where Nick Frost is a policeman and Bill Bailey's in there as well, and it's this really kind of sleepy sort of typical English village, but there's these really weird creepy murders going on, including shears to the throat and people disappearing, and nobody can quite work out what's going on, but none of the villagers seem really inclined to do so as well, because that's just their way of doing things. They're a small sleepy town, and it turns out at the heart of this town is a big old massive cult who are being led by the likes of Timothy Dalton and his little sexy voice, and Jim Broadbent as well, and a whole host of sort of English character actors who you sort of know and love. And what I love about it is, typical Edgar Wright humour. It's fast, it's slick. There's a weird shootout in a supermarket that isn't a shootout because all they've got is like peas and plastic forks. And, the amazing scenes of them all draped in their cloaks with the candles under their faces, and everything's for the greater good. I think Edward Woodward's in there as well. It's an absolutely brilliant piece of, British comedy, and it's, totally taking the piss out of, small village life and the sort of, not the cults that go on in small villages in England, but that sort of sense of neighbourhood and community and how it all sort of get linked together, and everything's got to do with the keeping the village perfect and not having people spoil the the nicely cut lawns and no lager louts, all this sort of thing. And it's just a really satirical, absolutely brilliant piece of cinema, and not your sort of typical cult, because it's not a horror.
Yeah, I'm quite liking these picks actually because I mean, when we first kind of broached this topic, I thought it was all going to be horror films, and that was my thought process in thinking of them. But yeah, Hot Fuzz is a good one, and it's very, very valid.
Anything to get a wee Timothy Dalton mention in there.
Timothy Dalton is fantastic in that film. He's absolutely brilliant. I love him.
He's also the best James Bond, so you know.
Well, that's a podcast for another time.
You're right, Thomas. It will be just you and me doing the next one because Mary's definitely going to get taken away in the middle of the night.
I'm going to go to social media now to see what people have gave us in their picks, and their own David Brogan has given us quite a few. He's one of the obvious ones in his words. Wicker Man, Temple of Doom, The Master, Eyes Wide Shut, Martha Marcy May Marlene.
That's a great film.
I've never even heard of it.
It's with, what do you call her? Elizabeth Olsen.
Oh,
That's
I like Elizabeth Olsen. Might watch it then.
That's a great
And he also wants me to mention the Simpsons episode with the John Cult, if we can count that. And I think we should because it's a brilliant episode.
Sure.
Over on Twitter, we have long-time loyal listener, Dr. Bob Steele, and he's went with the Wicker Man as well, and Conan the Barbarian, and The Devil Rides Out. Now, I know The Devil Rides Out is quite a famous one, like the Wicker Man, but I've never seen it.
Neither have I.
No, me neither, no. Even though it's got war notes in it, you know, and can't be a bit of war notes.
That is us all culted out for our theme on cult in relation to Midsommar by Ari Aster. As we said, it's out on DVD and Blu-ray just now, and we all do recommend it, as we do Halloween 6.
What do you think? It's like another world. Tomorrow's a big day.
Is it scary?
There's not been a lot of film news recently, unfortunately. It's just been the same nonsense regarding, let's ask some old director if he likes Marvel films, and some made-up Joker controversy. So, as it's Halloween, we're all going to pick a film each that we think you should watch this Halloween. John, what is your pick?
My pick's Addams Family Values, the sequel to The Addams Family. It's a brilliant film that the whole family can watch. It's obviously based on the TV show The Addams Family from the 60s. Raul Julia is absolutely brilliant in the sort of lead roles. Gomez, you've got Angelica Houston as his seductive, slinky wife, Morticia, and the rest of the gang, like Pugsley and all that. Pugsley, I should say. But it's just a fantastic film, just really, really funny. And as I say, everybody can watch it, so it's sort of perfect fare for Halloween.
Yeah, we were talking about Addams Family today, actually, and work there's a new animated film out. Then we were talking about the two films, and yeah, I mean, the casting in that film is absolutely amazing, absolutely perfect, and the chemistry with Raul Julia and Angelica Houston is totally on point, as is the chemistry with Christopher Lloyd and Christina Ricci.
Fantastic, can it? Yeah, because at one point he brings his new girlfriend in, and she says, "Isn't he a lady killer?" And he says, "Not proven."
It's John Cusack, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a brilliant pick, John. That's a brilliant pick. Maybe.
That's totally not what I thought you were going to say. I'm going to go down the more conventional route because I think is my favourite horror of all time, and it's kind of similar to what you were saying about the Wicker Man being set in the daytime. I think this Halloween everyone should watch Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original. It's an absolutely not for all the family, but it's a brilliant horror. It was, you'd read all the stories about it, about how all the props were rotten and their clothes were stinking, and it just all adds to kind of a folklore of watching it. And the dinner table scene alone is worth it. It's one of my all-time favourite horrors. Brilliant.
Nice.
Interesting. Yeah.
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre was the first film that I saw on video. Back in, I think it was 1982, we got a video recorder, and it was a big deal then. It was this big blocky Ferguson VHS job, and obviously there was very few videos you could actually get, and one of them was Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So my dad got that, and we all sat and watched it as a family with my granny, and we sat and watched the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and everybody loved it, especially the dinner scene. Oh, he's still alive! It's one of these films that will stay with me forever, just because of that memory. The early days of watching home entertainment videos.
Yeah, I'm going to go very conventional, very obvious one here, but needs no introduction. Halloween, John Carpenter's first entry in the franchise by John Carpenter. It's an absolutely exceptional movie. It still holds up to this day. It's creepy, it's scary. Yeah, we all know the film, we all know what it's about. If you haven't seen it though, definitely watch it. And if you have seen it, watch it again anyway. And if you're not interested in watching it for the 1500th time, I would watch last year's Halloween. Watch the new one. It's very, very good. Don't look at me like that, Mary.
I did not like that film.
No, you're right. The last one was worth a shout. It's actually a pretty good movie, but it's nothing compared to the original.
No, it's not. It's a very, very good sequel. Let's be honest. And which we've got Halloween 6 to contend with, doesn't really say much. And films with Busta Rhymes. However, it is a cracking film, and yeah, but my pick's going to be the first Halloween film. Not the first slasher movie, but one of the first, and it did influence an entire generation.
Yeah. Do you know the one Halloween film I still can't actually make it through, and I've probably only seen about 5% of because I'm such a shite bag? The Exorcist. I cannot. Like, I'm behind the cushion, I'm turning it off, or I'm actually just looking the complete opposite way. I cannot do it, and I cannot bring myself to watch the full thing. And I think that's testament to how much that film has held up, even though it's, 40 years old or whatever.
Yeah, definitely. I actually went to see the stage show of that last month.
There's a stage show?
Yeah, and it's Ian McKellen does the voice of the devil.
I do not need that in my life.
It's another film that almost went off the rails by its... I think it was the second one, actually. It's got The Heretic. I'm sure that also revolves around a cult as well. But let's be honest, I think there's 3 Exorcist films, if you don't count the prequels that went made later on.
Mm-hmm.
But the best Exorcist sequel out there is Repossessed. That's a brilliant film. Mary, you look at me. You've not seen Repossessed? Are you joking?
No, never seen it, no.
Leslie Nielsen.
Oh, yeah, aye, okay. I have seen it, yeah.
Mary, go and watch the trailer for Repossessed. Do you like Naked Gun films?
I love them.
It's basically a spoof of The Exorcist, but it's a sequel. So it's set like 20 years later when...
Right, okay.
What do you call it? The girl again?
Reagan.
Linda Blair, isn't
Reagan.
it?
It's been it's been Reagan grows up, but Linda Blair's in the film.
Yeah.
All right.
Adult,
okay.
And it's a stupid, crazy, madcap, Naked Gun airplane style comedy, but Linda Blair's in it.
Okay, well that I maybe would enjoy if it's a comedy.
It's great. That's my second recommendation for Halloween. Well, if that's us with our Halloween cult-themed podcast, I think all we've got left to do is wrap it up. Some
and ask you to
recommendations.
subscribe to the cult of Moviescramble, obviously.
Yes, subscribe to your cult and our charismatic and wonderful cult leader, John.
Thank you very
Let
much.
him lead the way.
You would make an excellent cult leader. They'd all be clamouring to get a wee touch of your hair.
Please email him, for the love of God. Please email him.
He's so lonely.
Many try, few succeed.
Do you want my email address again?
It is podcast@moviescramble.co.uk. Now, we've received one, but that was from me as a test, just to make sure it was actually working.
I got so excited there.
Me too.
Another false dawn.
You can also contact, if you don't want to, no, as I think so many people try to email at the same time, it's just cracking the server.
Can't get through. I think that's what it is. Yeah.
They
also maybe don't know how to address our dear leader because they've never seen such radiant hair before, so they're not sure.
Well, if Grey can be radiant, then
You can also contact us at Moviescramble on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Please do. We'd love to hear what you think of the podcast and just your general film chat because you're good. In fact, I've got a recommendation. A shout out to a good friend of the podcast. It's also on our movie site, so controversial. But they're at the People's Movies on Twitter, and these guys have been very interactive with us and very supportive of the podcast, and just generally good people. So yeah, thanks for the support, guys, and good luck with your own website.
Yeah, it's Paul Devine that runs the website. Nice guy. Met him quite a few times. He goes to various screenings that I sometimes get to go to, and I've hooked up with him a couple of times at the film festival and stuff. So yes, good shout out to him. He's obviously he obviously likes us a lot. I've got no idea why. Why are we both on?
I have been no help this entire podcast. I'm so sorry. I'm going to calm down now and be a mature adult.
Yes, just as we're finishing.
Yes, well done.
John, Mary, thanks for your time. Thanks everybody for listening. We hope you enjoyed it, and we will be back in a couple of weeks with something else, I'm sure. There's some good stuff coming out. Good stuff coming out. So whether we will review something new, something bold, something blue, stay tuned and we'll let you know. Bye.
Bye.
I don't know why you invited us.
That's why you look so guilty right now, because you know.
We only do this every 90 years. I was most excited for you to come.